Ethan Cole was getting ready for the biggest deal of his career. As the city's most elite architect and civil engineer, he'd built a reputation that had turned his name into a brand synonymous with innovation, perfection, and bold design. His empire had grown from a modest firm in a rented office to a billion-dollar conglomerate that shaped skylines across continents. At this level, there were projects he no longer handled personally. He had a team of directors, designers, and engineers who executed most commissions with precision. But some clients were different. Some projects carried a weight that demanded his personal touch, the kind that could redefine history. This was one of them. The proposal came from the Orion Consortium, a powerful international alliance of investors, tech magnates, and royalty from the Middle East and Asia. They wanted a structure that would eclipse every architectural feat in existence, a vertical city, one that would stand as a symbol of unity, wealth, and human possibility. Their vision, a building that would surpass the Burj Khalifa in both height and innovation, not just a skyscraper, but an ecosystem suspended in the clouds. They called it the Elysium Spire. At over 1 kilometer in height, the Elysium Spire was envisioned as a living monument, with residential zones, floating gardens, sky museums, research centers, and a zero-emission energy system that would make it the world's first self-sustaining megastructure. It would be built on a man-made island off the coast of a futuristic city still under development, Neoterra, the brainchild of Prince Khaled bin Rashid Al Maktoum, the visionary crown prince of Al Zahir. The consortium's representatives were a formidable mix. Prince Khaled, the ambitious royal who sought to leave behind a legacy greater than his ancestors. Dr. Mei Lin, the Chinese AI magnate whose company would provide the intelligent systems that powered every aspect of the spire. Victor Harrow, an American venture capitalist and philanthropist known for backing projects that seemed impossible and making them happen. And Ilara D'Souza, a reclusive Indian-born architect turned investor, once Ethan's rival in the global architecture scene, now a key partner in Orion's vision. When Ethan received the confidential dossier, the scale stunned him. The budget was limitless, the technology cutting edge, and the stakes astronomical. The project would demand not just engineering brilliance, but courage, the kind that rewrites what humanity believes is possible. And for Ethan Cole, that challenge was irresistible. He'd built towers that kissed the sky, but this one would touch the heavens. Ethan took on the project, though a part of him knew he was no longer the man he used to be. The fire that once drove him, the sleepless nights spent sketching impossible designs, the thrill of seeing a vision rise from blueprint to skyline had dimmed 2 years ago, the night his wife's plane went down over the Atlantic. Since then, life had become a series of motions: work, home, silence, and the tender, uncertain challenge of raising Lily, their 6-year-old daughter, who still asked, in her small, trembling voice, when Mommy was coming back. He told himself the Elysium Spire would change that perhaps if he poured himself into something vast enough, brilliant enough, it might fill the hollow ache that nothing else could. But the truth was simpler and crueler. He didn't know what else to do.
He was reviewing digital schematics in his office, models of floating terraces and climate-regulated vertical biomes, when his assistant, Jenna, appeared at the doorway. "Sir, your daughter's school is online too. They said it's an emergency." Ethan froze, heart clenching. The phone was in his hand before she finished speaking. "This is Ethan Cole?" he said, his voice low, already bracing. "Mr. Cole, it's Mrs. Bennett from St. Clair's. Lily, she's had a fall on the playground. She's conscious, but we think she may need stitches. We've called an ambulance." He didn't wait for more. The chair scraped back, his blueprint scattering across the floor as he grabbed his keys. "Tell Harrison to cancel the Orion call," he told Jenna. "I'll handle it later." She nodded, eyes wide with concern. By the time he reached the elevator, his pulse was pounding. Images of Lily, her smile, her mother's eyes, Her laugh that sometimes made the house feel alive again filled his head. The thought of anything happening to her clawed at the fragile peace he'd tried to rebuild. They were both still learning how to live without her mother, one day at a time, one heartbreak at a time. As the elevator doors closed, Ethan whispered to no one, "Hang on, baby. Daddy's coming." Ethan arrived at the hospital in record time, his heart still racing as he pushed through the pediatric ward's double doors. The sterile scent of antiseptic hit him first, sharp and cold, but what stopped him wasn't fear. It was the sound of Lily's laughter. She was sitting on the small hospital bed, a bright pink bandage wrapped around her knee, chatting animatedly with a nurse beside her. For a moment, Ethan just stood there, taking it in. It had been 2 long years since he'd seen that kind of light in his daughter's eyes, pure, unguarded joy. The nurse glanced up as he approached, and Ethan found himself caught off guard. She was striking, effortlessly so. Her skin was a rich, warm brown that glowed under the soft hospital lights. Her features were delicate yet strong, framed by neatly coiled hair tucked beneath her nurse's cap. Her smile was gentle, her voice low and musical, and there was a grace in the way she moved, confident, calm, and soothing. Her uniform did little to disguise the soft feminine lines of her figure, but there was nothing overt in her beauty. It was the kind that drew attention without trying, the kind that lingered quietly in the mind.
"Mr. Cole," she said, stepping forward with an easy composure. "I'm Nurse Clarissa Sinclair. Lily's doing just fine. She took quite a tumble, but she's been a very brave girl." Lily grinned, clutching the little teddy bear in her hands. "Daddy, Miss Clarissa says I get to keep the bear if I promise not to run too fast again." Ethan exhaled, a shaky laugh breaking through the worry that had knotted his chest. "That sounds like a fair deal to me." Clarissa smiled again, a soft, knowing smile that seemed to see straight through the exhaustion behind his eyes. "We'll have her all cleaned up in a few minutes. You did well getting here so quickly." Ethan nodded, his gaze flicking from his daughter's bright face to the nurse who'd managed to bring a spark of joy back into her world, and unexpectedly, into his. At Lily's pleas, Ethan made a call later that evening. He'd been sitting by her bedside, watching her tiny fingers clutch the teddy bear Nurse Sinclair had given her, when Lily looked up with those earnest eyes. "Daddy, can Miss Clarissa stay with me a little longer? She makes the bandage not hurt." That was all it took. Ethan stepped out into the corridor and dialed the hospital's chief medical director. His voice, calm and measured, carried the quiet authority of a man used to getting things done. The CMD was more than willing to oblige. After all, Ethan Cole wasn't just another patient's father. He sat on the hospital's board, had funded 2 of its research wings, and had been instrumental in the design and construction of its state-of-the-art facility. By the next morning, the arrangement was made. Nurse Clarissa Sinclair would oversee Lily's post-care for the next few weeks. When she arrived that morning, Ethan was waiting by the ward entrance, coffee in hand, reviewing site plans for the Elysium Spire. He glanced up, and the world seemed to pause. Clarissa wasn't in her uniform today. She wore a sleeveless floral dress that flowed with the lightness of spring, the soft fabric hugging her slender frame with effortless grace. The colors, blush and ivory, brought out the warmth in her skin and the quiet radiance in her smile. Her hair was loose this time, curling gently around her shoulders, and she carried herself with the same quiet confidence that had captivated him in the hospital room. For a brief, unguarded moment, Ethan forgot the blueprints in his hand. If he had thought she was beautiful in scrubs, this was something else entirely. There was a natural elegance to her, a kind of presence that seemed to draw light toward her. "Good morning, Mr. Cole," she greeted, her tone professional but softened by the curve of her lips. "Lily told me she's feeling much better." Ethan found himself smiling back, a genuine one, the first in a long while. "That makes 2 of us," he said quietly. Clarissa tilted her head, her eyes curious.
"You don't look like a man who's been getting much rest." "I don't remember the last time I did," he admitted, his gaze steady, "but for some reason, today feels different." Something unspoken lingered between them, fragile, unexpected, but undeniable. Over the next few weeks, Clarissa Sinclair became a constant presence in the Cole household. She came every other morning, her arrival always heralded by Lily's laughter echoing through the hallway. What began as medical follow-ups, checking Lily's wound, changing her bandages, and guiding her through light mobility exercises, soon turned into something gentler, something that didn't feel like a part of a recovery routine at all. Lily adored her. She insisted on sitting beside Clarissa during breakfast, telling her stories about school, about her dolls, about how her mommy used to braid her hair before bedtime. Clarissa listened with a patience and warmth that Ethan hadn't seen in anyone in a long time. She never tried to fill the silence that sometimes followed Lily's questions. She simply let the little girl's emotions flow, quietly reassuring her with her presence. Ethan often watched them from a distance, from the edge of the living room or the doorway to Lily's room, and each time, something inside him softened. He couldn't remember the last time his home had felt this alive. Clarissa had that effect. There was a quiet confidence about her, a kindness that didn't demand attention but commanded it nonetheless. She carried herself with grace, thoughtful, unhurried, yet there was a spark in her laughter that made even the most ordinary moment feel lighter. Sometimes she stayed for tea after her visits. The first time it had been at Lily's insistence, but after that it became unspoken habit. They'd sit in the glass-walled sunroom overlooking Ethan's garden, a tranquil space he'd designed for his late wife, and talk about small things: books, travel, the city, the upcoming Elysium Spire project. Clarissa had a natural curiosity about architecture. She said, "You build dreams out of metal and light, but it must be lonely at that height, isn't it?" The words struck deeper than she knew. Ethan looked at her then, really looked, and realized that for the first time in 2 years, someone had seen past his reputation, his wealth, and his name. She'd seen the man beneath it all. And that terrified him. That night, after she'd left, Ethan walked into Lily's room to find his daughter asleep, her teddy bear clutched to her chest. A faint smile played on her lips, and for the first time since the crash, she looked utterly at peace. Clarissa had brought that light back, not through grand gestures, but through the simplest acts of care. As Ethan stood there, the moonlight spilling across the room, he realized something he hadn't dared to admit before. Clarissa Sinclair was beginning to heal more than just his daughter. She was healing him, too. It began innocently, as most turning points do. Clarissa had stayed late one evening. Lily had begged for a grown-up dinner with her father and Miss Clarissa, and neither of them had the heart to refuse. The dining room, once a quiet, lonely space, now glowed softly under the amber chandelier light. Lily talked endlessly, her laughter bubbling like a song, and Ethan listened, watching as Clarissa gently helped her with her cutlery, the two sharing easy smiles that made his chest ache in a way that felt almost unfamiliar, the ache of something good. After dinner, when Lily had finally fallen asleep, Ethan found Clarissa in the kitchen, rinsing plates she hadn't been asked to touch. "Stay for a glass of wine?" Ethan's voice was low, a blend of invitation and quiet need. Clarissa hesitated only a moment before accepting, settling back into her seat. The shared intimacy of the late hour seemed to lower their guards. He spoke about the car crash with a raw honesty that caught her off guard. Not just the physical impact, but the lingering psychological toll. "I'm struggling to find the zeal for work again," he confessed, the word hanging heavy in the air. Clarissa listened, her expression a mirror of genuine sympathy. She spoke softly, drawing on her own experiences as a nurse at the hospital. Her words were gentle yet firm, a steady pulse of encouragement that slowly began to dispel the gloom around him. She spoke of resilience, of healing, and of the profound good a person could still do in the world. As she spoke, their gazes locked, a silent, deepening connection that transcended the clinking of glasses and the muted sounds of the city. A current of undeniable attraction hummed between them. The final distance was negligible, a formality. Neither knew who bridged it first, but in a breath, they were in each other's arms, their lips meeting with a tender urgency that sealed the moment, turning a sympathetic conversation into a promise. The kiss was a revelation, a promise of a future Ethan hadn't dared to imagine. As they slowly pulled apart, the lingering warmth of Clarissa's presence filled the space that had been cold and empty for so long. Their relationship blossomed quickly, a vibrant contrast to the muted tones of his recent past. Dates turned into shared, quiet evenings, and soon Clarissa was a comforting fixture in Ethan's life, a bright star guiding him back to himself.
However, the shadow of his past hadn't completely receded. One crisp Saturday morning, as Ethan and Clarissa were planning a picnic with his daughter, Lily, the phone rang. It was the law firm handling the ongoing litigation for the airline involved in the plane crash that claimed his wife's life. The voice on the other end was formal, regretful. The airline's lawyers were challenging a previous settlement point, forcing Ethan to relive the trauma he barely survived. The old wound, barely scarred over, was ripped open. Ethan felt a familiar dread coil in his stomach. The initial legal battles had been brutal, forcing him to face the devastating finality of his loss again and again. He'd hoped they were behind him. Now the prospect of reopening that chapter, of dredging up the painful memories for a drawn-out court battle, threatened to consume him once more. He began to withdraw, his newfound joy dimming under the weight of the looming fight. He snapped at Lily over a spilled juice, grew quiet during dinner with Clarissa, and spent his evenings staring blankly at legal documents instead of engaging in their usual easy conversation. The grief he had carefully contained was surging back, threatening to drown him. Clarissa, with her medical training and compassionate insight, immediately recognized the signs of trauma resurfacing. She tried to talk him through it, but Ethan pushed her away, convinced he had to face this particular pain alone, that he couldn't burden her with the weight of his profound, complicated grief. "This is my mess, Clarissa," he'd insisted, his voice clipped and strained. "The loss of Lily's mother, you don't need to be dragged into this darkness." The distance between them grew, a chasm of unspoken fears. Lily, a sensitive girl, noticed her father's regression and Clarissa's quiet sadness. She missed their laughter, their easy companionship. One evening, after a particularly strange dinner, Clarissa found Ethan in his study, surrounded by papers, his face etched with worry and sorrow. "Ethan," she began, her voice soft but firm, "I know this is a wound I can't heal for you, but I love you. And this loss and this ridiculous lawsuit is a part of your life now, which means it's a part of mine." She sat beside him, gently taking his hand. "Let me help you carry the burden, not just stand by and watch you crumble. We mourn together and we fight this battle together. I'm not just here for the good days." Her unwavering presence, her refusal to give up on him, slowly chipped away at his walls. He looked into her eyes, seeing not pity, but resolute love. He finally confessed the full extent of his grief and the anxiety about reliving those final moments through court testimony. She listened without judgment, offering practical advice, and more importantly, a steady anchor in his storm. She helped him organize documents, attended a preliminary meeting with his lawyer, not as a legal expert, but as his unwavering partner, a constant reminder of the life he still had to live. With Clarissa by his side, Ethan found the courage to face the lawyers head-on. The legal process was arduous, but this time he wasn't alone. Clarissa's steady support, coupled with his lawyer's expertise, helped him navigate the turbulent waters. Slowly, the crushing weight of grief and stress began to ease, replaced with a quiet determination. He saw firsthand Clarissa's capacity for fierce loyalty and profound empathy.
Months later, when the settlement was finally, irrevocably finalized, Ethan felt a lightness he hadn't experienced since before the crash. He realized that this challenge, though painful, had only solidified his bond with Clarissa. She hadn't just stood by him, she had given him permission to grieve fully and then helped him rebuild a foundation for happiness. From that point forward, Clarissa seamlessly wove herself into the fabric of their lives. She never sought to replace Lily's mother, but instead honored her memory by simply loving the man and the girl she left behind. She was there for Lily's soccer games, helping her with homework, sharing laughter and stories. She became a comforting presence, a source of stability and joy. Ethan saw how much Lily adored her, how she brought a warmth and completeness to their home that had been missing for too long. They weren't just a couple, they were a family. Clarissa, the compassionate nurse, had not only helped to heal Ethan's heart, but had become an indispensable part of his and Lily's world, a beacon of hope and love. Thank you so much for watching this beautiful love story. If it touched your heart the way it touched ours, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories like this. Your support means the world to us. It helps us keep creating stories about love, healing, and hope. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when a new story drops. Until next time, keep believing in love, because sometimes love truly finds us when we least expect it.